Greetings. This video is going to cover Voicemeeter Banana, discussing the functionality of this virtual mixing console software, and also discuss how to configure it to work on your computer. So without further delay, let's get started. Once you download and install the software on your computer and run the program, this will be the Voicemeeter Banana console you'll be presented with. The first thing that you're going to want to do is connect an audio device to Voicemeeter Banana, and you're going to do that at hardware output bus A1. And what you want to do is you want to select your best audio device, because it'll be considered as the master audio point, and it will set the master sample rate and buffer size. ASIO or WDM device types usually allow the best performances. ASIO is only available for bus output A1. So left click on this area here and choose your device. In my case, my Focusrite USB audio interface is connected to my system. My desktop speakers are connected to it, and it is my primary audio device, so I have selected it for output A1. So you would choose whatever device is configured on your system. I've chosen the WDM option here. WDM has a low amount of latency, less than 30 milliseconds. That's the delay between the input and then hearing the output. But you also have the option, as I mentioned earlier, on bus A1 only, of choosing an ASIO driver, which should be coming with your audio interface or your sound card. Make the decision about what works best for you. You can also select MME as a driver if you would prefer. However, MME often comes with a latency of as much as 100 milliseconds. And then you have KS or kernel streaming, which has a low amount of audio latency. However, not all devices are supported by kernel streaming. So make whatever decision works best for you, and configure your best sound device for output bus A1. In my case, I also configured an additional device on bus A2, my Arctis 5 game headphones. You may want to do the same thing if you're going to use Voicemeeter Banana for online gaming or streaming. And again, you have a lot of different drivers that you can choose from. As you'll notice, the ASIO is missing here, as it's only available on bus A1. So once you've got your audio device connected, your output device, you're going to want to put some input into the system. So you have 3 strips that you can introduce input into Voicemeeter Banana: strip 1, strip 2, and strip 3. I only have one input device on my system. That's my microphone. It's plugged into my Focusrite USB interface, and I've decided to put that on strip number 1. I've labeled my microphone strip by right-clicking on that area, typing in microphone, and then hitting the enter key. So now strip 1 is configured for my microphone. Let's talk about the other items that are on the input strip, and we'll start with the section called IntelliPan. There are 3 different options to choose from here, and you scroll through those by right-clicking on your mouse. So you have voice, color panel. If you right-click, that will change you to modulation effects panel. If you right-click again, you will be taken to position 3D panel. So let's talk through these individually. So the color panel gives you the ability to color your voice or an input source in a quick way. It can act on 3 different frequency bands, and it can give a little bit of tiny reverb on the half top, which is up here in this area. Reverb gives you a little bit of like a sound of a room and so forth. I prefer to keep it here because I like to add some voice, but some low end to my voice, but you can move it here for more mids. You can increase the treble, and then again, if you wanted some reverb, you could put it there. If you've decided, I like the way the voice sounds without this coloring, all you have to do is double left click and it'll turn that feature off and turn that square back to gray. But as I mentioned, I like it to add a little bit of low end, so that's what I've done here. Going on to the next selection is the modulation effects panel. So the modulation effects panel gives you the ability to add chorusing or phasing to your voice. If you move to the left, it will add feedback. If you move it to the right, it's more simple. So I'll give you an example of, some chorusing and some phasing, some things with modulation, some things without, and you can get into some really unusual sound effects and whatnot on your voice if you want to. Something that you could play with and have some fun with. To turn it off, double left click, and that disables that effect. Position 3D panel gives you the ability to move your voice around. The sound spectrum gives kind of a psychoacoustic effect to give a 3D effect to your voice if you choose. I don't use this option, so I double left click and leave it off, but that's what that is there for you. I do, however, use the voice color panel. Okay, the next options you have available are compression and gating. You can read further online about what compression and what gating is, but essentially compression will give a little bit of a boost to your voice and can make it sound better, and you can adjust the gain of the compression with your fader here. You'll notice to the left you've got a set of bars that are gray at the bottom and they're turning green. This is your meter that's showing the strength of the signal of the input that's coming into Voicemeeter Banana. You want to keep this as much as you can in the green. When this begins to get into the red, you're going to start clipping or distorting your signal, and that's not going to sound very good. So do your best. If you have to adjust your fader here, your amount of input to keep your source in the green, that's recommended. Let's talk about the controls that are on the right side of the fader, starting with these areas labeled A1, A2, and A3. When we first started, we connected a device initially to output bus A1, and then I connected my headphones to output bus A2, and there's also an output bus of A3. These controls correspond to these output buses. And what this means is when you highlight one of these, like if I highlighted A3 and I had a set of earplugs or speakers that were connected to A3, now the sound from this input strip is being directed to this output. It's not going to go directly to this output. It's going to go from this input strip to this master fader that's labeled A3, and it can be affected by volume. If it was muted, you can apply equalization to it and do some other items, and then it's routed from A3 to this output. So if you imagine, you will, that you have a wire that goes from A3 here to this fader, and then from this fader to A3 here, that's the way the sound is being routed. Same thing applies to A2. In my case, I have my headphones, so when I highlight A2 here, now the voice from strip number 1 is going to my headphones. But before it gets to my headphones, which if you'll imagine my headphones are here right after this A2, this sound from this strip is going to this fader here first and then going to my headphones. And you're going to see on this console that the EQ is kicked in, and I'll explain what that means in a minute. But this is how you route the signal from your input to your outputs. Okay? You also have 2 virtual outputs as well. These are your 3 hardware outputs. You've also got 2 virtual outputs, B1 and B2. You're currently hearing my voice over the virtual output bus B1 that is controlled by this fader here. You also have an output bus of B2 as well. Now you're hearing my voice because I'm routing the signal from this microphone currently to B1. Now I'm going to unclick or unhighlight B1 just like this, and even though the signal is going into the strip, you were not hearing that because I disrupted the output. In this case, anything that you send to a virtual output goes here or here, depending on whether you use output bus B1 or output bus B2. Now, what controls output bus and B2? What devices move the sound through? They're these two devices here. This Voicemeeter VAIO is one playback device. It's a virtual input-output device. And then you have Voicemeeter aux, which is a secondary virtual input-output device. The way you access these devices is through your sound menu. So you would go to your speaker icon down in the lower right-hand part of your screen. You would right-click there, and you would choose Sounds. The sound dialog box will pop up. I'm going to move it so you can see it better. You want to navigate to the Playback tab. You'll have a lot of different playback devices on your system depending on what you have installed. But if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, now this occurs after you've installed Voicemeeter Banana, you'll have two additional playback devices. You'll have Voicemeeter Input, which you want to set as your default device. This maps to this strip here, Voicemeeter VAIO, and you'll have a secondary virtual input output that is Voicemeeter aux that translates to this strip here. So essentially anything that's going through this playback device is going to pass across this strip. Anything that is directed to this playback device will pass across this strip. Now, I wanted to point out I set this Voicemeeter Input as a default device in order for you to be able to route signal on your system through Voicemeeter Banana. You have to send the signals to the system, and this is how you do it, by setting this as your default device. You're going to have a communications device that you use, your microphone or something. So you'll need to set your microphone or your default communication device. You can do that by right-clicking. You know which one is your default communication device because there's a telephone handset that's the icon for that. Your default device is a check mark. Okay, I want to talk about the output or the recording devices as well to show you how those match up. You have Voicemeeter output and Voicemeeter auxiliary output. You know, you had Voicemeeter VAIO in the playback section as a default device. You also have it in the output device. So that translates to what the developers say by a virtual input output device. So Voicemeeter VAIO translate to this channel. Voicemeeter aux translates to this channel. And if you use your microphone or something like that in order to communicate, say to chat when you're playing video games, you will want to right-click this and set the recording device as your default communication device as well. Okay? So we've covered connecting a device for your output, how you route the sound to both the hardware output devices and the virtual output devices. You also, in this area, have a virtual recording device where you can record all of the audio that's being pushed through Voicemeeter Banana. You can save those recordings in WAV, MP3 format, others. Information about that is in the documentation. I want to talk about these two strips in a little bit more detail since we've discussed those. Anything that you send from a default standpoint across your system is going to pass through this strip because we've set that as your default playback device. So, for example, if you're playing a video game, that sound would normally come across your desktop speakers, you know, out the Windows mixer. It's going to come across this channel. And by doing so, you can direct where that sound is going. Right now you'll see A1 is highlighted. So if I was playing a video game on my computer and I wanted to hear the sound, it's currently go across my desktop speakers because they're connected to device A1. But let's say I was playing a video game and I didn't want to wake the people up in my house at night. Maybe I'm having a difficult time sleeping. I can click A2, and now my video game sound is going to my headphones because I know my headphones are connected to output bus A2. If I was playing a video game while we were recording this video, you would also be hearing the sound because I've also selected the virtual output bus B1. That's how you're hearing the sound from my microphone. You would also be hearing the sound from my video game as well. Now, when I'm streaming or doing videos like this online, I usually have my microphone off. I'm not sending it to any channels because it can be weird hearing your voice. Sometimes you'll get a delay or an echo hearing your voice in your headphones. So I don't send that to my headphones. I do send it to my listeners who hear what I'm saying across output bus B1. That's the virtual output bus. And then, of course, anything that's coming across my desktop, I'm going to send to my headphones, A2, and then I'm going to send to the virtual output bus B1. But what about this channel that I have labeled music? Well, you have the ability, because you have the second playback device, to direct output from applications that you're running on your computer and direct where those sounds go. The way you do that is you, again, right-click on that speaker icon, and this time you would choose Open Sound Settings. Look down at the bottom for App Volume and Device Preferences, and as long as the application is currently active, if it's not active and you want to choose where to send the sound, you will need to run the application and do so. But then you can go here and choose your output and input. So, for example, I could choose to send system sounds. That's not a good example. For example, I could choose to send sounds from this to that Voicemeeter aux channel. And so those sounds would go across this only. The way I've used this in the past is if I'm using Spotify, I will direct my Spotify output to Voicemeeter aux. That way I can choose who hears the music. A lot of times when I'm playing video games, I'm waiting for screens or I'm waiting for the game to get started, or if you have a multiplayer in the game and you're in a lobby and you're waiting for players to show up so that you can begin a match, I will oftentimes listen to music. And if I'm streaming, I don't want the folks that are listening to my stream to be disturbed by the music, or if the game is being played, to not distract from the gameplay with another sound source. So I can send my Spotify music only to myself by clicking A2. And then if I'm doing a video about music or something like that, and I want my audience to hear what I'm working on, then I can, of course, send it to them with the B1 selection. All right, so that's a general overview of how to connect output to Banana Meter and then introduce inputs into the system, how to route the sounds to your desktop speakers or to your headphones, how to route sounds to your virtual outputs, inputs, and we also talked about the recorder as well. And those are the basic features and functionality of the system that should be enough information to get you started. So if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. There's a little bell icon that you can click so that if new videos are posted or if something is updated, you'll be alerted. Thanks for watching. Hey there, one quick thing. You want to make sure after you watch this video to download the Voicemeeter Banana user manual. Lots of information within the manual that discuss features and capabilities of the software that go beyond what's discussed in this video. You'll be glad you did.